Hey Sarah, how's it going?
Noah, how's it going? Good to see you.
You too, you too. Glad we made it. We're live. Well, we're folks are just starting. We're still a little early here, but I turned it on early so we make sure there was no technical difficulties. You got on okay?
I'm so glad you did because I was like, do I actually have to join the webinar? I was like, let's try this button and see. So I love
Amazing.
it. We already have Jose on from Scale AI.
Oh, there we go. How are you, Jose? I know it's a weird format where we can see names but not faces. All right.
Did you get a lot of rain today? It's been pouring here in Arlington.
Yeah, it's all week. Just nothing but rain here on the East Coast.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's all
for
right. I
sure.
think this is it. Then we move into proper spring, right?
That's true. Don't they say April showers bring May flowers?
There it is. Love that. Love that. I was down in DC last week. I saw cherry blossoms for a hot second. It was nice. They weren't
The
all blown away.
festival, it was early this year, right? Sometimes it's April, but this time it was.
Those poor things. I heard they're uprooting all of the trees around the tidal basin to be able to do some sort of renovation.
But they're replanting more of them.
There you go.
Yeah, they'll replant more than they're taking away. So,
That's that's a good That's a good principle. Hey, all right. As folks are starting to trickle in here, this is fantastic. So we've got Jose and Howie and John and Jonathan and Mark. Would love as you guys are jumping in. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you're based physically or spiritually these days. And yeah, it's great to see some faces rolling in here. We'll wait a few minutes and then get started.
Jonathan Beck was one of my hardware engineers out at Nuro, one of the old autonomous vehicle company I used to work at. So I'm pretty excited to see his name pop up here.
That's awesome. The Sarah fan club's coming in strong. Love that.
Oh, please, Noah, your fan club is something we should be talking about. There
That
are
that
quite a
that
few
does nothing.
folks here that we're pretty excited, had great things to say about you. I think back from your time at Rebellion Defense.
That is kind, but I'm throwing a flag. I don't think that's real.
Already doubting me. This thing just started, Noah. I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh man. Well, once this camera comes rolling, starts rolling, the guest is always right. But before we go live, well, I guess we are live actually. This is all being recorded. Good deal. All right, folks are coming in. This is great, folks. As you hop in here, hop on over to the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself. We'd love to know who you are, where you're joining from. That could be a physical location or a company, or just where you are in life right now. What you're hoping to get out of today. We'd love it all. We're going to get started here in just another minute or two. We'll give it another minute or two for folks who are navigating the platform to just get in here before we get started. In the meantime, Sarah is regaling us with stories of DC and her knowledge of the tidal basin reconstruction plans, which were which were solid. Are y'all? So you guys have kicked off Q2, right? It's do you do a quarterly kickoff down there, or what is the quarterly
Well,
system like for you
we're
guys?
aligned with the fiscal calendar. As far as kickoffs this week, I would say here at Primer, we are in the middle of performance reviews. And
Fun.
so we're doing annual there, and that's always fun to go through. But that being said, yeah, super excited. I can't believe it's already April though, Noah. Like this year has just been flying by.
I know that is wild. But here we are. Time only accelerates. I am just looking. They told me that there is a way to actually promote folks to the stage to ask questions, and I'm just playing around with the settings. I'm not seeing it. I know this is a new platform. It's open source and it's a free platform that gives everybody kind of a channel and records, which is fantastic. But it just means that I don't necessarily understand how the full thing works. So I won't bore you all with those details. We're a couple minutes past the top of the hour. Sarah's been so gracious with her time and making herself available for us today. So let's go ahead and get started. I would say as you're rolling in, we've got more than 10 of you here now, which is fantastic. Please go ahead, just introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us who you are, where you're from, physically, what company you're with, or what you're hoping to get out of today. As we get rolling, you'll see on the bottom right, there's a chat function. There's also a questions function. So as you have questions for Sarah, feel free to just go ahead and drop them in there. We'll get started. We'll have a little bit of a conversation here out of the gate, and then we're very quickly going to turn it over to you all because we want this to be a resource for you. I think everybody will benefit the less you have to hear me talk. So with that said, thanks everybody for coming. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. Sarah Noyes, Primer.ai. Sarah, I could try to introduce you, but I won't do as good a job as you do telling your own stories. So would you just, for some of these folks have known you for a long time here today, which is amazing. Others may be meeting you for the first time. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you've gotten to where you are at this phase in life.
Sure, Noah. Thank you so much. So, folks, I would tell you that it's important to go back to my childhood. I was adopted from Seoul, Korea as a toddler. Most folks want to adopt babies, right? And so I was almost 4 years old. I remember that trek coming through JFK Airport. So the reason why I bring that up is that I have always wanted to give back to the country that took a chance on me. And so that service led me to going to West Point. One of my favorite memories, I would say, is, graduating, of course, but at the commissioning ceremony, both my grandfathers were World War II veterans. One also served in the Korean War. And so they were the ones pinning my second lieutenant bars on for commissioning there. So about 8 years in the Army, last assignment culminating as an assignment officer for lieutenants and pre-CC captain's career course type. And that was at Fort Knox, Kentucky. That's our HRC. They'd already moved on from Hoffman buildings here in DC. And so navigating my next chapter, joining the civilian sector workforce, it was pretty daunting, right? I knew I wanted to stay in people ops and stay in that kind of capacity. And I would probably equate the majority of my Army time as being an HRBP or a chief of staff. Those are probably the most aligned, I would say, to the civilian sector. And so I joined Capital One. I actually was on their military recruiting team, which is incredibly fulfilling because I got to help transitioning military veterans and military spouses consider a career. They're navigating their new chapter. Capital One being fintech, huge McLean headquarters, office buildings here. That really paved the way for me to join other tech opportunities. So some of the lesser known, there are some startups that came out of the Moonshot Factory and Alphabet that didn't quite make it. One of them was called Loon, these big Wi-Fi balloons. It's unfortunately graveyard now, but that really paved the way for me joining a really great autonomous vehicle last mile company. And so Last Mile Delivery, where I got to meet Jonathan Beck, which is why I'm so excited to see his name pop up here in the chat today. And after 3+ years there at Nuro, it brought me to Primer. Now that I'm back here in DC, the pandemic had us move back from Silicon Valley to the Arlington footprint. And so here I am, and it's already been a year. And I will tell you that I realized hiring the most mission-oriented folks, this is where I needed to be for that. And I feel that my chapters come full circle, having served in the Army, been in tech startups, now part of defense tech. Primer is 120 Series D, startup, and it's just been an incredible ride so far.
Thank you for walking us through your fascinating personal history, Sarah. Starting with why and the founding story, all the way through a number of the interesting journeys and paths you've been down along the way and to where you are today. there's a number of themes that I think we'll hit on because there's a number of pieces that'll probably resonate with different folks on the call today. You've been through a number of different tech companies, both in the defense space and beyond it. And you made, the transition from the military to civilian. You referenced that a little bit as you kind of began the story. Maybe we start there, and I'd love to hear. And I think for some of the folks on the call here today, as you think back on that transition, and as you coach, and as you've hired other veterans making that transition, or coached others making that transition, what are kind of the top 2 or 3, Sarah, tips or tricks for transitioning service members? Things that you, as you wish your former self knew, or things that you coach or advise folks who are making that transition to keep in mind as they embark on their civilian careers.
Sure. So I have 3 snippets here I want to share. I did allude to on my own LinkedIn feed that I would try to reference as many prime numbers as possible today, right? So first off, I would say with that resume, ensure that it really does focus on how you improved the foxhole, how you saved the organization time, money, resources, manpower hours, right? I remember on those officer evaluation reports that people would talk about their roles and responsibilities, but that's not what your resume is for. Your resume is really to focus on the accomplishments and the achievements there. And I bring this up because quite often in interviewing, folks tend to use the language we did this, we did that. And the problem with we, when you're interviewing for any company, not just defense tech, is that it lends some issues with hesitating. Was Noah a top performer? Was he the game changer? Was he the linchpin? Or was he just a part of a high performing team? And in the military, we're so ingrained about giving thanks and credit to others that we sometimes forget to kind of own a little bit of that to ourselves. So that's the language barrier there. I would absolutely recommend, and it shows up on a resume. Folks tend to be a little bit shy and they don't want to share their accomplishments and achievements when they really should be, bragging about it. In the Army, we called it an I love me book, all of those accomplishments that you had that you could reference when it came time to writing those evaluations, performance reviews. The second part I would say is just being a bit more, how do I say this? Relaxed and casual, right? Your signature block does not have to say very respectfully. A fun story, I like to make fun of myself that when I was at Capital One, I would put meetings together and I would have the agenda and I would be set to go. And then people would say, Sarah, how was your weekend? Why are you asking me about my weekend? That's not on the agenda. And so there was a whole part of me that had to kind of retrain my brain in order to, small talk, chit chat. Oh, we're doing this. Okay. Like I could make time for this, but it was just, it definitely took some muscle memory repetitions to ensure that I remembered to do that. And then finally, I would say the last big advice I have for military transitions is high self-awareness, knowing where you want to go, what locations, what type of roles you want to pursue. When I get on the phone with a candidate and I ask them if they're open to relocation and they say, well, I'll go anywhere, it begs the question, well, then you could have just stayed in and let Uncle Sam tell you where to go next, right? Like I want you to choose and I want you to make that decision. And I've noticed that folks want to help you, but they can only help you if you know what you're targeting, what you're looking for. And Noah, sometimes it's just easier to know what you don't want versus what you're actually looking for and targeting. And that's okay.
Sarah, this is awesome advice. Not even, you talked about it for a military transition, but it's great advice for everybody. I think even as I think of myself as a 22-year-old coming out of undergrad and thinking about, when you'd meet somebody who was willing to take the time to mentor you or to speak with you about your career or really anything. And they say, how can I help? And you're like, I just want to pick your brain, or I don't know, what should I do with it? Like the more general you are, and because we're on the receiving end of it today, right? When someone comes to you and they don't have any left or right bounds around what they might be exploring career-wise or otherwise, it's very, very difficult to offer meaningful assistance to that person. You're effectively like, you think you're being open to everything, but what you're really doing is putting the cognitive load on them to figure out what you need to do, which is a really hard thing. So it's a key lesson. Thank you for sharing that. All three of those were great, from the language of interviewing. I speak with I, not we. The relaxation, being a little bit casual, being someone that people can see themselves working with, and then taking agency in your future, having some agency in where you want to go, are all great points. Folks, again, I'll invite you all to navigate over to that questions tab on the bottom of your screen and start dropping questions in for Sarah. I'll ask one or two more, and then we'll turn it over to you all. We want to answer your questions. Nobody's here to hear me talk. Sarah, as you think about the current job market and folks that you see applying to the roles that you have open at Primer, we'll talk about the organization in a little bit, but you've recruited, you've brought on folks in all sorts of different technology companies in different times, in boom cycles, in leaner times. I'm curious, like how do you look at the job market today? And are there hundreds or thousands of applications for every one job? Is it who's kind of got the power in the market, and how do you advise folks who are looking for jobs right now?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, in the immediate direct pipeline for folks applying to jobs, there's been a huge uptick in volume there. There are companies that folks can pay for that will apply to jobs for you too. Right. And so I love seeing that kind of traction, especially because there are folks that don't have as strong of a network. And so them applying directly is how they get their foot in the door. But I would just encourage folks to be memorable, right? If you're going to reach out to me on LinkedIn, it is amazing when I see, "Hi, Sarah, I've been following Primer. I saw this specific position. I'd love to learn more about it." Or even better, it's, "Sarah, I already applied to this role. Here's why I'm excited about Primer," because they connect all the dots and they put it together. When I'm doing that initial recruiter phone screening with a candidate, I will always ask about, why Primer? What about our mission resonates with you? And what's a showstopper, what's going to result in probably not a follow-up call, is when all they say is, "Well, you're an AI company, and I really want to get into AI." And then I pause for a moment. I'm like, "Oh, they're going to say something else. Oh, no, that was it."
That's it.
Right? Because especially in defense tech, Noah, its mission is you are supporting 24/7 critical mission operating environment. That urgency is there. The bias for action is there. And what we do really matters. It's massive impact, right? And so I want to hear a little bit more about why specifically that mission resonates with you. Cover letters are optional, but I do read them when they come across my Greenhouse, our applicant tracking system. And there are some amazing cover letters that didn't just talk about highlighting their own qualities, accomplishments, and achievements, but they talked about, "Hey, this is what I've done, and here's why I think I could have this impact at Primer's mission, and everything that you're trying to accomplish." And I loved that, right? Because I immediately thought, this candidate gets it, right? TC is worth talking to. And in recruiter speak, TC means the candidate. We use TC as an abbreviation, and they and them, to mitigate gender bias in the recruiting process. So apologies if I drop a TC on you. That's just how I'm used to talking to candidates. And so I really hope that folks on the line here, on the call, they are utilizing their networks, harnessing LinkedIn. That magic number, it's not a prime number, but that magic number on LinkedIn is 500 plus. The larger your network, the easier it's going to be, because the best time to have a job, get a job, is when you have a job, right? And what folks don't realize is that the larger your presence on LinkedIn, the more easily you will be searchable for those sourcers and recruiters that are trying to find talent. Earlier today, I was doing a search on LinkedIn for headcount that's not even posted yet. So it's not advertised, but being proactive, I want to kind of start thinking about what that talent pipeline could look like, right? And so here's LinkedIn giving me profiles and suggestions of candidates that I might want to reach out to and have those conversations because I know this headcount is coming. So that power of networking, I would just say I cannot stress that enough. No, I hope everyone on this call is looking at the chat and looking at everyone's names, connecting with them on LinkedIn. I love that Wilbert Williams did this, right? Said, hey, would love to connect with anyone here. And that's exactly the right way to do it.
That's great. Let's double tap on that. You talked about sourcing and going on LinkedIn. I'm very curious, what percentage of the open roles you have are filled by folks you reach out to proactively versus folks who come into you? Do you have any sense of what that balance looks like?
Well, when I look at hires, I would say 20 to 25% are referrals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's someone saying, hey, I worked with so-and-so. I think they'd be an amazing match for the company. I would say 50% are still direct applicants applying. Another 10% is sourced specifically, someone that I thought could be a good match that I ran into at a networking event, or someone that I've been talking to for years that I've been keeping tabs on this whole time, right? So it is a good variety, and it goes to the messaging of do not build your network when you need it. Build it so that when you do need it, it is there for you.
Do you look at, one of the things we've talked about with some other folks on here and in other forums around, it's never been easier for folks to put out content, right? Whether that is writing LinkedIn posts or Twitter threads or publishing articles or putting out a vlog or what have you, creating YouTube videos. Never been easier for folks to kind of, or either their GitHubs. How much do you look at other things, a candidate's other bodies of work beyond a cover letter and a resume at that early stage?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, GitHub, fair game. The more you provide on your resume, the more likely a hiring manager is going to do some additional looks and digging so that they can really figure out if this is a candidate that they want to invest in.
Yep. Cool. Folks, I'm going to put one more pitch for the questions tab on the bottom. If you've got a question for Sarah, go ahead, drop it in there, and we will start taking your questions here momentarily. Sarah, we've talked about some of the roles. Let's talk about Primer specifically. How are you all looking at the organization's growth in the year ahead? Where are you hiring or looking to hire as you look forward to the rest of 2024?
Thanks, Noah, for asking. I've been waiting to pitch you all. And so it was really great. At the end of the year, we have evergreen roles open for engineering. So that's front end, back end, DevOps, security, data scientist, machine learning, and even researching, right? Researchers there. But outside of some of those more technical positions, if you're thinking about getting into defense for the first time, we have roles like a sales development representative for our public sector accounts. We also have a coordinator for our marketing as we go to a lot of these trade shows. And so I want the folks here to realize you don't have to have previous defense or public sector experience to be considered for a defense tech company. In fact, when I look at some of my leadership roles, especially like on our product or customer success, the majority of those individuals actually had large go-to-market experience, shipping a product from inception all the way, now working on specific features. So it's full product life cycle. So I don't want anyone on this call thinking, well, Sarah, Noah, I'm really concerned because I don't have a security clearance. I mean, I'm willing to get one, but is that going to be a blocker? No, majority of these defense tech companies have roles that are both with a clearance and without. And you may notice that some of the roles that require security clearance, there just may be less flexibility when it comes to being able to work remotely. So a lot of the cleared positions, there's going to be probably a location tied to it to be on site with a customer. But when I think about Primer, we have headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, where I am today, in San Francisco, and then our latest one in Pasadena, California, with folks across the US footprint.
Fantastic. No, thanks for that rundown. It's a great reminder It's part of our mission at Defense Tech Jobs. It's not just technical folks, and it's not just the senior folks, and it's not just military folks. There really are opportunities to get some in the mission if you're so inclined, and we hope you are. So let's turn.
And what I love about startups is that folks want to take a chance and build something for the first time. So if you find yourself as like not intimidated by that, like, sure, let's try it. I'm at a point in my career where I want to take that risk, then absolutely defense tech startups is a really great opportunity. And I don't want you to overlook that either. Sorry,
so
Noah.
No, you're great. Thank you. And there's a question that just cropped up here specifically to this point before we move off of Primer roles. But looking at the career page at Primer, it looks like the majority are in software engineering, sales, and senior product roles. Are there any kind of program or project management roles that you forecast kind of coming online?
Yeah.
In the future here?
So we have what are called technical delivery managers, customer success managers, and product manager roles. I actually do see a couple of those probably coming up in the next quarter here. So the reason why I say that is we're hiring some leaders in those job families. And once we have those leaders on board, then we'll have the opportunity to grow their teams in that respect. So stay tuned for sure if you're not seeing those specific job families listed right now on our careers page.
And now might be a good time to connect with Sarah. Good. Okay. So to that point, Sarah, a question from Kit. As you're looking at hundreds of applications for something like, for example, product management, what about a resume stands out and makes it past those first 6 seconds? Great question.
Kit, I'm so glad that you asked this question. The average recruiter spends 30 seconds on a resume before figuring out if they want to move forward with that candidate, right? And so it does make you wonder, like, am I being rejected by an AI bot? Is someone human actually looking at my profile? And absolutely, we are looking. So I would say, more often than not, it's the disqualifiers. It's no, not the right location, or no, it's not the right years of experience that we're targeting for this senior level position, or no, there's typos, there's spelling errors, there's information that's missing. So quite often, and then no, this resume is 5 to 10 pages long, right? So folks, please keep it to 2 pages, your last 10 years of industry experience. You can reference the others if beyond that, but it's not specifically just keywords. It goes back to results. Did X, which resulted in Y, accomplished this in X amount of time, or saved this amount of money. And so quite often it's not just, I need someone who has previous startup experience, or I need someone who's managed public sector customers before, right? Like there are a lot of opportunities to stand out. I would say misspellings definitely is a bad one. That's not going to get you to move forward. Not having a full LinkedIn profile, or having your LinkedIn and your resume read very differently, right? That's a big disqualifier there. So I would encourage you all that you can't use the same resume for every job across the board. Think of your resume as a living, breathing document. So a product manager resume for Primer could actually look very different than the one you would use for, let's say, Google or Palantir or Capital One. So ensure that you're catering your resume and tying it to the mission, the company's product, highlighting certain skill sets that'll be relevant for that specific position. And it's really important that these resumes are as complete as possible, because they will be saved in that applicant tracking system. And recruiters, we love to revisit candidates that were great, and maybe we weren't able to hire you right now, but we have the opportunity to revisit you again in 6 months, right? So do not be concerned about a one and done solution. That's just not what it's going to be. Like, you want to have a more specifically tailored, catered to that specific job and role.
I think it's a great one. I've in the last kind of couple of years started talking more about job searching. It's business development, right? And you wouldn't you wouldn't submit a proposal that's exactly the same to a large defense contractor, a small startup, and a consumer tech company. So don't do the same with your resume, right? You are the product, and you've got to tailor to the outcome that you're looking for. That's a great one, Sarah. We'll take maybe one or two more. We'll just go until about halfway past today. There's a question here about networking from Will. Sarah, you talked about LinkedIn, but I'm curious if there are other ways. What are some of the best approaches to networking? Again, when you want it, not when you need it, that you've seen from candidates or just others in the industry. Who does this really well? What does it look like?
I mean, Noah, we're doing it right now, right? This is a virtual chat in which people can come in. They could catch a recording if this time didn't work for them. It's not just attending the virtual seminar or fireside chat. It's the follow-up of, hey, Sarah, thanks for spending the time. I really enjoyed hearing you, or you really missed the mark here. You should have talked about this, right? And that's the value of networking virtually. So yes, nothing replaces the in-person eye contact, handshake, fist pump, being able to gather together in person. But if the pandemic taught us anything, that's not going to stop us from being able to find opportunities to still connect and collaborate with one another. So I think going back to being most memorable, that's probably easier done in person. Ways you can be memorable virtually could be the background. Maybe Purdue and UConn are your teams, and you can brag about your bracket is still safe in March Madness. And so it's just about presenting yourself in a way, even virtually, if not in person, in which people can be like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, they had the UConn background, remember? And something small like that. Don't underestimate the power, but that is what we're talking about when also being memorable. But the follow-up, folks, for sure, after this, if you're not connected with Noah, if you're not connected with me, if you're not following defense tech jobs, then absolutely. And tell your friends, because spreading the word is also what's going to help grow this community, which in turn is going to grow networking opportunities for everyone.
Love that pitch. You're fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. We're gonna let you go. I guess I'll see if we can squeeze one last question in as we hit goodbye here. But I think this is a good one because we talked about half of your job, head of talent. We didn't talk about the culture part. And so there's a question from Mark about just give us 30 seconds on the culture at Primer and then the defense tech community writ large.
Yeah, so I take my job very seriously in talent acquisition. It's find, grow, keep. It does me no good to find this amazing talent if I'm not helping to grow, develop in order to retain said talent so that I can get their referrals, right? And so culture overall means that everyone is a brand ambassador. They abide by our values. One of them I'm really proud of here is constantly curious. So on Wednesdays, we actually do a hot take and we sample snacks or we give our opinions on something and we vote. And it's so ingrained as tradition now on Wednesdays that it's a part of our identity. It's something that we look forward to, and we all gather here in this hybrid environment on Wednesdays. In defense tech, it's tricky because I have a lot of seasoned government workers and then tech workers. So let's take this example. Coffee. The government workers, ex-government are like, oh, free coffee. Cool. And then the tech workers are like, where's my Nespresso? Where's my cappuccino? And so guess what, folks? Here at Primer, we have both an espresso and a Keurig machine. So everyone is happy. So it's the best of both worlds, that you get this innovation, creativity, fun environment. And those are Lego flowers on our kitchen counter there, if you folks can see that. And then the traditional bespoke government model. So if you came and visited me here, we're on top of the Clarendon Metro Station location in Arlington, you would notice that even in our dress code, it's very more like tech casual. If you're in a suit and tie, we know you probably had a customer meeting or you're on the hill and the customer that you were going to meet was a bit more buttoned up, and that's okay. We're here for it.
That's fantastic. I deeply resonate with the, you are where you are, a little bit the environment that you were raised in and that you come from. But we can all learn. We can all learn to change. Sarah, thank you so much. I know we didn't get to every question. I'm sure folks, to her points, I'm sure Sarah would be happy to follow up. I'm certainly happy to follow up. Shoot us a note if you want to talk offline. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. This was fantastic. You are a wealth of insight. We're so grateful that you took some time out of the day to share it with us and to invest in more of this community that's looking to move into this mission critical space. So thank you. Thank you again. Folks, thank you for making the time to be here for your questions. Next week, same time, we'll be here with Zach Greenberg, the head of talent from Shift 5, which should be another great conversation. And if you're not already subscribing to Defense Tech Jobs, defensetechjobs.com, we welcome you to do that. And we've got actually a pretty exciting announcement that is going to be a surprise Monday, this coming April 8th. We're announcing something pretty cool that we haven't, and nobody knows about yet. So y'all are hearing about it first, especially if you're technical about an event that's coming up. So thank you all for being here. Sarah, thank you again. And we will sign off.
Thanks, Noah.